Hi, and welcome back to Ronnie the Reader. Today, we're going to be doing another author chat video. So I did one a couple of weeks ago on Riley Sager, and now I wanted to do one on Miranda, who is probably my second favorite mystery thriller author. To go over her mostly adult mystery thriller books in sort of the same way that I did in that Riley Sager video, kind of going through each book briefly, giving a little bit of a synopsis and a little bit of my thoughts overall, and then doing a ranking of the video or of the books at the end, how they currently stand for me. I think I've listened to every single Miranda book as an audiobook, so I've actually not read any of them physically. I do own four of them here that I've bought after the fact because I really liked them and enjoyed them and wanted to own them. I have also read two of her young adult mystery thriller books, and I'm not going to be including those in the video, but I think both of them were like 3 stars. They were both perfectly fine, but her adult ones kind of definitely range a little bit more on the gambit for me of where they actually sit, so it should be a little bit more interesting than the Riley Sager video, where I really just like all of them pretty much. Even A House Across the Lake, which I gave 2 stars, like I still had a fun time reading it because it was still so ridiculous. But yeah, these books, I just have so much more of a wide range of thoughts and ratings on them. So we'll go ahead and jump in. We'll go in publication order first, and then we'll do a ranking at the end. All right, so the first one that we're going to be discussing is going to be All the Missing Girls. Now, this book came out in 2016. It was Miranda's debut adult mystery thriller, and I ended up reading it in 2019 as an audiobook. And this follows a woman named Nicolette who's returning to her super small rural town for the first time in, I think, 10 years. It's been 10 years since her friend disappeared, had this disappearance. I think she disappeared while at this state fair or a fairground, was visiting the place where they live, their town. And this book was initially marketed and kind of has a hook that it's actually told in reverse order. So I think Nicolette shows up and the book starts on day 15 of her being there, and then each chapter chronologically actually goes backwards until the first day that she shows up in town. So instead of kind of her showing up and everything going down, it's more well, I guess she showed up and everything did go down, but you're getting that in reverse. So it's an interesting premise, a cool idea. This book, however, did not work for me. I actually gave it 2 stars when I initially read it, but truth be told, I don't remember too much of it. I did read my review before starting this video just to refresh my mind on what I was thinking when I finished it in 2019, and all I really wrote was that I found it meandering and boring, and that the twist itself of being told in chronological order was fine, was serviceable, but it didn't necessarily need to be there. Overall, this one just didn't really work for me too much, and it really put me off for reading the rest of Miranda's work for a long time, and then I binged them in, I think it was, most of the other ones were in 2021, I believe, so kind of 3 years ago at this point. I don't think I should say, but this obviously is pretty early into 2024, and so her next book that's coming out, Daughter of Mine, is not out yet, so this obviously won't be included. The next one we have is The Perfect Stranger. This one came out in 2017, so just a year after All the Missing Girls. This one is following a woman who is living as, I believe, a reporter, and she kind of has gotten into some trouble recently where she runs into an old friend and then ends up moving into this rural cabin with that friend. And then the story kind of goes from there, and honestly this one is the one that I think sticks out the least in my mind of Miranda's books. It's the one that I definitely remember the least about, just overall how I felt, the plot details, kind of the ending of it. I ended up rating it 4 stars on Goodreads, but I know that in my actual ratings that I kept, it was actually a 3.5, but considering I don't remember too much of it, I mean, maybe that's a little bit too high of a rating. And I can't say too much about this one because I just can't really recall that many details about it. That's indicative, though, of Miranda's earlier works. After reading this one, because I actually read All the Missing Girls, like I said, in 2019, and then the rest of them were a year or two later in 2021, around then. And I started with a couple of the young adult books that she has that I did not read in, or that I'm not including part of this video. and those were The Safest Lies. I can't remember what the other one is called that I read it, but I'll stick just a quick picture of it up here. But then this one was the first of the adult ones that I jumped back into. And I think I rated it pretty highly because compared to the young adult ones, I think it felt a little bit at least more kind of fast paced and like a little bit more realistic. I remember compared to the young adult ones, those ones just felt very unrealistic. And they were much more actiony. They're much more thrillery than mystery. And this one I think was just a lot more mysterious and not as thrillery. So yeah, this is, I don't have too much to say about this one, so let's move on to the next one. All right, the next one is the first one that I actually own, and that is actually The Last House Guest. This one came out in 2019, I believe. This one is set in a town in Maine, and it's following our main character named Avery, I believe, and basically she was best friends with this girl from the town who comes from a richer family, and then that girl ultimately is actually found dead. Initially, the police believe it was a suicide, and now, like, 10 years later, whatever the number is, Avery is back in this town. She's now working, I think, as a, like, party planner or an event coordinator, and she's getting kind of tangled up back with this rich family that she was so close to in her teenage years, and you're kind of following the story and the secrets of things that happened and learning everything. And ultimately, I gave this one 4 stars, and I enjoyed this one. It definitely got a little bit more just like grounded in a way. Like the stories from here on out, while at times are very like nonsensical, sometimes like and just like over the top, they always have this sense of like groundedness to them, and I think that comes from the characters, and I think that's why I enjoy Megan Miranda's books a lot, and I think that's why it took me a little bit to get into them before I really enjoyed them a whole lot. And that kind of really started with this one. It really kind of like pushed me over the edge into wanting to read more. And all of the books are just super fast paced. I know that people have like hit or misses with Megan Miranda just in general. Some people really enjoy them, some people think some are just okay, and some people actively like DNF them because they're too boring, which I definitely can see. Like, I think all of those are valid criticisms of all of her works, including this one. This Megan Miranda was actually the one that really popped out to me, like when I was kind of like getting them, when her books were coming out, this one seemed very divisive, is what I'm trying to say, with people just like not either really liking it or DNFing it. So I don't know, they're for me kind of the perfect summertime thrillers, and that's why I just really like them. And this one I would actually recommend starting here, to be honest. Like, if it were me and I was restarting and I had knowledge of all of Megan Miranda's books, I actually would skip All the Missing Girls and The Perfect Stranger and just jump right into The Last House Guest. And I think if you don't necessarily like this one, you probably aren't going to like the rest of her books. I think that if you didn't like the first 2, you could get into the rest of them, but I think if you can't get into this one, she maybe is not an author for you. But much like Riley Sager, and I repeated a lot in that video, all of the books are disconnected. There's no kind of unifying theme or overarching characters in them, so you can really jump in any of the ones that have interesting premises, but ultimately most of the premises are something happened in the past and now we're in the future finding out what truly happened. I mean, this is a basic premise of most domestic mystery thrillers. All right, and then the next one that we have is actually probably her most unique work, and that's The Girl from Widow Hills. This one came out in 2021, I think, maybe 2020. I actually can't remember the years that these were published at this point. But this one actually follows a girl who, when she was a child, she actually went missing for, I think it was a couple of days, maybe about a week or so. She was found later on in a storm drain, and this story kind of became, like one of those almost like ripped from headlines type things of like, this missing child kind of swept the nation. Everyone was like, oh my god, where is this kid? And then, she was found alive and well, returned to her family, and now the main plot of the story is her as an adult returning to that hometown, or like the town where everything has happened. She's now since changed her name and has a new identity. She kind of is wanting to lay low. She really feels like this event that happened to her kind of ruined her life in a way, and she obviously has a lot of trauma from it. And I would say that this book, at least from my recollection, from my memory, I gave it 4 stars. it probably, actually, I think this was a 4.5 star rating when I read it, but it deals a lot with like trauma of oneself and traumatic actions and dealing with difficult parent relationships, because our main character and her mother always had a difficult relationship. And so it's just kind of going through that. And I think that the kickoff is like someone finds out that our character's new alias, which she was born as Arden and she now goes by Olivia, knows that someone knows that like who she is. Also, a part of this that I forgot to say, and the reason that she went missing in the first place is that Arden was a sleepwalker and dealt with sleepwalking. And so the story kicks off with her sleepwalking again, which she hadn't done since she was a child. So yeah, I would say that this is a good one to jump in with. Honestly, it's very fast paced. I think the fastest paced of all of her books. I just liked it. I thought it was good. I'll get into my final ranking in just a moment here once we're kind of through talking about all of them. All right, the next one I have up is going to be Such a Quiet Place. And honestly, this one was just really made for me and all of the things that I like and really look for in like a domestic mystery thriller specifically. Basically, you're following a like street in a small town, and there are multiple people and family who are living on this street. And it kind of kicks off with the murder of a young couple who lived on the street, and then a year later, things are happening as a fallout of that particular murder. And this one just really, like, I don't even know what it was about it, but it was so fast-paced, so fun. I think the reason I liked it is because there are a lot of different perspectives in this book. We are jumping around from character to character, and I really like that. I also really love a kind of, like, insulated setting, but something where you can still breathe. So like where multiple characters are living on the same street or something like that. Like I'm really like a sucker for that kind of trope and that kind of like plot device that people pull from. So that's ultimately why this one worked so much for me. And I think from what I've seen, at least, I think that this is Megan Miranda's most successful work. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I actually have no clue. I like number wise, rating wise, but maybe it's because I've really liked it that I just get content of people also recommending and liking this book. Just has such, I think, a fast-paced way of telling the story that you're not going to get bored. There's a really interesting midpoint twist in this one that really spins the story into a slightly different direction for the back half of the book, and both halves really worked for me. Down to the last two, and the next one we have coming up is going to be The Last to Vanish. This one came out in 2022, and this follows the story of a woman who is working at this like resort town almost, where there are these like not famous, but like these beautiful hiking trails around this town. And essentially you're following her investigation into, I think it's her missing brother or something, or someone goes missing on this trail. And then you are just kind of following like the story of these missing people on this trail and like how our main character is wrapped up in it. And this one is very like espionage almost. Like our main character is like sneaking around a lot, doing a lot of their own investigations into different people who are coming through this town and this resort that like she's working at for this job. I think it's set in North Carolina. So is the next book. It's North or South Carolina, which I think is where Megan Miranda lives now. So I'm assuming that's where most of her books are going to be set. But I think this one, and then The Only Survivors, and I think Daughter of Mine is going to fall into the same sort of vibe, and I think that's where Megan Miranda has gotten comfortable, and that vibe essentially is like small town, singular character focus that is dealing with multiple other characters who have their own secrets. And while that's, you know, most mystery thrillers, and that's definitely aspects of the other ones that we've already discussed, I think we've found, or at least Megan Miranda has found, where he's kind of going, and this one was just okay. I did give it 4 stars again. So it was fun. It was fast paced. It was a little bit of a step down from some of the ones that came previous to this one for me, but still good. Still recommend it. I think you could jump into this one, no problem. Let's discuss the next book. I don't own it physically, but it's the last one to be released as of this video, and that is The Only Survivors. This one is following a girl who is going to meet up with a group of friends, you could call them. Essentially, they were all high school classmates, survived a tragedy, like an accident that they were in while they were seniors in high school that left a couple of their other classmates dead. And so this book is basically telling the story of our one girl in the present, as well as getting flashback chapters from other people's perspectives from the night of this accident and event that ultimately led to them now kind of forming this like survivors group, essentially, where they meet up once a year. Like I said, this one is set in either North or South Carolina, very like Outer Banks vibes. There's storms going on. And I gave this one 5 stars. It was in my favorite books of 2023 because it just has all the things that I like. Small town, set on the beach, storms going on, flashbacks, to things. And it has a very similar vibe to The Last to Vanish, but I think is done a little bit better and just ultimately has parts of the story that were executed but like better to my taste. Not that it was necessarily a better book, because I think all the books, starting especially with The Last House Guest, are on very much par with like writing. There's nothing that's like glaring as far as like twists or anything that like set them necessarily apart. It's just kind of the vibes that you go off of and some of the individual tropes and specific plot points that happen that I think affect whether you're going to like a book versus not like a book with Megan Miranda, which some people might get a little bored of. I've seen the criticism that she can feel very samey, which I'm not necessarily disagreeing with, but I think if you like the sort of books that she writes, then they're probably always going to at least hit well, like decent for you. But if you're not necessarily into that, if you're looking for more, because at the basic premise, these are very simple domestic mystery thrillers. There's nothing huge going on with them. So with all that being said, let's get to the rankings. So we're going to go through these pretty quickly, but starting in the bottom spot, we are going to be going with All the Missing Girls. The next one that I'm going to put slightly above that is going to be The Perfect Stranger. Versus like All the Missing Girls, where I just like actively disliked parts of it, this one just like I actively don't I don't remember it. It doesn't stick out in my mind pretty much at all. In the next spot, we have The Last to Vanish. This is a good one. It's fun, it's serviceable, it's kind of ushering a new era. And then the next one, we have, I think, her most basic work, which is The Last House Guest. And basic, not like a bad term. I'm not using that like negatively to describe it, but this is just very baseline. It has what you really could look for in a mystery thriller, like domestic mystery thriller. And I think this is a good place to start for people who are just getting into thrillers. So kind of average, middle of the road, and so it's middle of the list. And then the third spot on the podium is going to be The Girl from Widow Hills. I think the book that dives into grief and trauma the most, maybe outside of The Only Survivors, but definitely grief and trauma when talking about other family members. So this one was good, and like I said, very fast-paced when you are reading this one. And then coming in the number 2 spot is going to be Such a Quiet Place. Has everything that I look for. I also think this is a great place to start if you're just getting into mystery thrillers, if you're just getting into Megan Miranda. So yeah, this one is number 2, and I definitely recommend this one. I haven't talked about it a whole lot, like in the past, but I definitely really, really recommend. And then coming in at number 1 is going to be The Only Survivors. I just really, really enjoyed this book. It has all of the perfect tropes and things that I look for out of a mystery thriller. So it really hit for me, was a 5-star, and is my favorite Megan Miranda so far. And it really makes me excited to see how Daughter of Mine goes when it's released later this year. So that is everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this made a lot of sense. I didn't plan out too much of what I was going to be talking about with each book, because I think that you should just kind of go into them and see how you vibe with them. But I did want to at least kind of get my Megan Miranda thoughts all in one place, because I don't think it's actively known that she is one of my like mystery thriller favorite authors that I read from, which I know that she's not everyone's cup of tea. But that is all I have to say for this video, so definitely let me know what you've thought, and until next time, bye.